What happens when your best friend becomes your worst nightmare? In 2006, a chilling case unfolded that shocked a community and left many questioning the depths of human capability for betrayal and violence. This is the story of Tiffany Hall, a woman whose close friendship with Jamla Tunstall turned into a horrific and tragic nightmare. From the bond they shared as lifelong friends to the unfathomable acts that shattered lives, this case reveals disturbing truths and challenges our understanding of trust and human behavior. Tiffany Hall and Jamla Tunstall were childhood friends who considered each other sisters, despite not being related by blood. Growing up together in East St. Louis, Illinois, they often found comfort and solidarity in their friendship, especially during difficult times. However, despite their deep bond, their lives took vastly different paths. Jamla Tunstall faced a troubled childhood, moving frequently between foster homes, which brought significant instability. But she was determined to rise above her circumstances. She became a mother to 3 children and worked tirelessly to create a stable life for her family. With aspirations for a brighter future, Jamla enrolled in community college with hopes of becoming a photographer. She was committed to giving her children the best life possible despite the challenges she faced. On the other hand, Tiffany Hall's journey was marked by turbulence from a young age. She encountered legal issues and had a strained relationship with her family, often clashing with household rules. Becoming a mother as a teenager, Tiffany struggled with parenting and faced allegations of abuse and neglect that led to her losing custody of her children for a time. Though she eventually regained custody, her life continued to be fraught with challenges and instability. Despite their contrasting life paths, the bond between Tiffany and Jamla appeared unbreakable. Yet the differences in how they navigated their struggles and hardships would ultimately lead to a devastating and unimaginable tragedy, shaking all who knew them and revealing one of the most shocking crime stories ever recorded. Throughout her life, Jamla Tunstall dedicated herself to building a stable and secure environment for her children. Growing up with a difficult childhood, including time spent moving from one foster home to another, Jamla was determined to create a different life for her own family. She focused her energy on raising her 3 children with love, care, and structure. Her commitment to their safety was evident in her daily routines. Jamla was known for personally walking her children to the school bus each morning, ensuring they started their day safely. Living in a challenging housing project where danger was a constant threat, she rarely allowed her children to play outside unsupervised, keeping a close watch whenever they did. Her goal was simple yet powerful: to provide her children with a nurturing environment and shield them from harm. Beyond her commitment to her children, Jamla harbored dreams for her own future. Determined to improve her life and set an example for her kids, she enrolled in community college with the hope of becoming a photographer. Despite facing numerous challenges, including financial constraints and the pressures of single parenthood, she remained focused on her goals. Jamla's strength and perseverance were a testament to her desire to create a better life for herself and her family. In stark contrast, Tiffany Hall's life was marked by turmoil and instability. Unlike Jamla's efforts to build a positive environment, Tiffany faced a path fraught with legal troubles, erratic behavior, and strained family relationships. Her challenges began early in life, with frequent clashes with her family that led to a fractured and tumultuous home life. As a teenager, Tiffany found herself in trouble with the law, earning a reputation as a juvenile delinquent. Her relationship with her mother was particularly strained, characterized by conflicts that escalated over time. These issues extended into adulthood as Tiffany continued to encounter legal problems and struggled to maintain stability. Tiffany's challenges extended to her role as a mother. She became a parent at a young age but faced significant difficulties, losing custody of her children after allegations of abuse and neglect surfaced. Although she eventually regained custody, her life remained chaotic and unpredictable. Unlike Jamla, who worked tirelessly to create a structured life, Tiffany seemed unable to escape the cycles of instability and conflict that defined her existence. Her struggles with the law and erratic behavior became increasingly severe, painting a stark contrast between 2 women who, despite their shared history and friendship, ultimately followed vastly different paths. This divergence would tragically culminate in a series of events that shocked and devastated everyone who knew them. In mid-September 2006, A horrifying series of events began with a shocking claim by Tiffany Hall. On September 16th, she called the police, stating that she had just given birth to a stillborn baby at Frank Holton State Park in East St. Louis, Illinois. She arrived at the hospital carrying the lifeless newborn, reportedly wrapped in a blanket. Her demeanor was unusual, and when hospital staff approached her for a routine examination, Tiffany refused to allow them to examine her or the body. This act alone aroused immediate suspicion among medical personnel, who found her story inconsistent and concerning. As hospital staff and authorities began to question her version of events, another sinister development was taking place. Jamla Tunstall, a 7 months pregnant mother of 3, along with her children, suddenly vanished. Jamla was well known and well liked within her community, so her sudden disappearance, along with that of her children, sparked widespread concern and anxiety among friends and neighbors. The search for Jamla and her children intensified as days passed without any sign of them. Family and friends became increasingly desperate, circulating photos and pleas for help while authorities ramped up their investigation. The community was gripped by fear and confusion as police struggled to piece together clues and make sense of the seemingly unrelated yet suspicious circumstances involving Tiffany's stillborn claim and Jamla's unexplained absence. During the early stages of the investigation, authorities focused on tracking down leads that could offer answers about Jamla's whereabouts. They spoke to neighbors, checked known locations where she might have gone, and attempted to piece together her last known movements. The urgency increased with every passing hour as the well-being of Jamla's 3 young children, Deandra, Ivan, and 10-month-old Janelle, hung in the balance. Yet there were no leads pointing toward their safety or their current location. The growing fears and suspicions around Jamla's disappearance eventually turned toward Tiffany Hall. As a close friend of Jamla and one of the last known people to have seen her, Tiffany came under increased scrutiny from investigators. However, it would take a horrifying confession and an intense search before the grim truth of what had occurred would be fully revealed, shocking not only the investigators, but the entire community that had rallied in hope for Jamla and her children's safe return. The shocking truth about Jamla Tunstall's fate began to unravel through a chilling and unexpected confession made by Tiffany Hall to her boyfriend, Keith Horn. Just a few days after claiming to have given birth to a stillborn baby, Tiffany revealed a horrifying secret to Keith. She admitted to cutting the unborn baby from Jamla's womb. The revelation sent Keith into a state of shock and disbelief. Though he struggled to comprehend the extent of Tiffany's actions, he quickly understood the severity and contacted law enforcement, triggering a frantic investigation. The confession led police to search near Tiffany Hall's residence in East St. Louis, Illinois. On September 21, 2006, their search ended in a grim discovery: the lifeless body of Jamla Tunstall. Her remains were found discarded in a weedy, vacant lot behind Tiffany's home. The condition of Jamla's body revealed a scene of unimaginable brutality and suffering. Investigators determined that Jamla had been struck repeatedly in the head with a blunt object, later identified as a table leg. The force of the blows was enough to render her unconscious, leaving her vulnerable and defenseless. Tiffany's actions didn't end there. While Jamla was incapacitated but still alive, Tiffany proceeded to bind her hands and feet with duct tape, ensuring that she could not move or resist further. As Jamla lay restrained, Tiffany made the horrific decision to use a pair of scissors to cut open her friend's abdomen in an attempt to extract the unborn baby. The crude and violent act was carried out with complete disregard for Jamla's life, leading to significant blood loss and eventually causing her death. Forensic evidence later confirmed that Jamla was still alive at the time of this gruesome procedure, making the act all the more tragic and chilling. The brutality and coldness of the crime left investigators, as well as the surrounding community, in utter disbelief. This was not merely a case of murder. It was a calculated and premeditated act of violence inflicted by someone Jamla had trusted deeply. The discovery of her body, combined with the details of her final moments, revealed the extent of betrayal and violence that Tiffany Hall was capable of. As the investigation continued, it became clear that this was only part of the horror. Authorities would soon find out that Jamla's 3 young children were also victims, leading to a heartbreaking and deeply disturbing conclusion to the case. The betrayal by a trusted friend and the grotesque nature of Tiffany's actions highlighted the depths of human cruelty and left a lasting mark on everyone touched by this tragedy. The most devastating chapter in the tragic case of Jamla Tunstall unfolded when authorities shifted their focus to finding her three children: 7-year-old Deandra, 2-year-old Ivan, and 10-month-old Janelle. And as the investigation progressed, hope that the children might still be found alive diminished. On September 22, 2006, police re-entered Jamela's apartment, hoping to gather any clues that could aid in locating the missing children. It was then that they were met with a horrific discovery, one that shocked even experienced investigators. Inside the apartment, authorities were confronted with a foul odor that hinted at the grim reality they were about to uncover. Upon further inspection, they found the bodies of Jamela's three young children in the most unthinkable of places. Two of the children were crammed inside a washing machine, while the third was found in the dryer. The gruesome scene left no doubt that their young lives had been ended in a manner that was both deliberate and cruel. The discovery not only confirmed their deaths, but highlighted the extent of Tiffany Hall's betrayal and brutality. According to the evidence and subsequent confessions, Tiffany Hall carried out the murders of Jamela's children shortly after taking their mother's life. On September 18th, just days after murdering Jamla, Tiffany returned to Jamela's apartment with the children. Posing as their caretaker, she used their trust and familiarity with her to gain access. What followed was a chilling series of actions that stripped away any sense of safety the children might have felt. Tiffany reportedly filled a bathtub with water, and one by one she drowned each of the children. Some accounts suggest that she may have given the children cough syrup to sedate them, making it easier for her to carry out the murders without resistance. The methodical nature of these actions, along with her ability to carry them out despite their helplessness, left a deep scar on everyone who learned of the details. After killing the children, Tiffany made an attempt to conceal her crimes by placing their bodies in the washing machine and dryer within Jamela's apartment. This choice to hide their lifeless bodies in the very home they had once shared with their mother added another layer of callousness to her crimes, underscoring the depths of her actions. Tiffany never provided a clear motive for why she killed Jamela's children, leaving investigators, the community, and the victims' loved ones grappling with a painful void of unanswered questions. While speculation has centered on possible factors such as mental illness, jealousy, or desperation, no explanation can fully account for the brutality and deliberate nature of her crimes. The community was left reeling not only from the loss of Jamla, but also from the senseless deaths of her three young children. The horror of their fate remains a painful reminder of how deeply trust can be betrayed and how quickly lives can be shattered. For the families, friends, and neighbors who knew and cared for Jamla and her children, the loss remains an unbearable burden, a tragic chapter in a story that will never be forgotten. Following the horrifying revelations of her crimes, Tiffany Hall was swiftly taken into custody and faced an array of serious charges, including the murders of Jamla Tunstall, her unborn child, and Jamela's three young children. Initially, Tiffany pleaded not guilty, but as the evidence against her mounted and the gruesome details of her actions came to light, she changed her plea. In June 2008, Tiffany Hall pleaded guilty to 5 counts of murder. As a result, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, sparing her from the death penalty, but ensuring she would spend the rest of her life behind bars. However, the legal proceedings did not end with Tiffany's sentencing. Her defense team raised concerns regarding her mental health, asserting that her long-standing psychological issues may have influenced her actions. They cited her history of mental illness, which reportedly began during her childhood and included multiple hospitalizations. During her initial evaluation, Tiffany was deemed mentally fit to stand trial, but questions remained about her mental state at the time of the crime. Subsequent reports highlighted diagnoses such as psychotic disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, mood disorders, and mild intellectual disability. These diagnoses became the basis for her appeals and post-conviction petitions, which claimed that her legal representation failed to adequately address her mental health during her trial. Tiffany filed multiple appeals in an effort to have her conviction reviewed or her sentence reduced. In her petitions, she argued that her defense lawyers did not fully investigate her mental health history or present sufficient evidence to challenge her competency during the time of the crimes. One critical point raised was that some psychiatric evaluations were completed after she had already entered her guilty plea, potentially affecting the fairness of her trial. While most of Tiffany's appeals were denied, in 2020, she achieved a small victory when an appellate court that allowed her to continue pursuing post-conviction relief. This decision granted her the opportunity to raise further arguments about her mental health and the adequacy of her legal representation. Despite this limited success in the appeals process, Tiffany Hall remains incarcerated, serving her life sentence without the possibility of parole. For many, her imprisonment provides some measure of justice and closure. But for Jamla Tunstall's family and the community, the scars of her brutal actions will never fully heal. The aftermath of the brutal murders of Jamla Tunstall, her unborn child, and her 3 young children left a lasting impact on the community. The tragedy resonated deeply with the sheer brutality of the crimes, leaving friends, neighbors, and strangers reeling in shock and grief. In the days and weeks that followed the revelations, the community came together to mourn and support Jamla's surviving family members. The funerals for Jamla and her children were deeply emotional events. On September 29, 2006, a massive crowd of over 700 people gathered to pay their respects and honor the lives of Jamla and her children. Friends, family members, and even those who did not know the family personally attended the services to offer their condolences and support. The scale of the gathering was a testament to the profound impact the crime had on the community, bringing together people from different walks of life to grieve collectively. Stories were shared about Jamla's bright smile, her love for her children, and the joy they brought to her life. The children were remembered fondly for their unique personalities and playful spirits, offering moments of warmth amid the heartbreak. In addition to the outpouring of emotional support, the community rallied together to raise financial assistance for the family. Within just 3 days, over $330,000 was donated to cover funeral expenses and support Jamla's remaining loved ones. The generosity displayed during this dark time highlighted the compassion and resilience of the community in the face of overwhelming tragedy. The crime left a lasting impact, with many grappling with questions of trust, safety, and the potential darkness that can lurk beneath familiar faces. The betrayal and brutal violence perpetrated by Tiffany Hall, someone Jamla had considered a trusted friend, served as a chilling reminder of the unpredictability of human behavior. For years to come, the community would continue to reflect on the loss, honor the memories of Jamla and her children, and work to support each other in the wake of unimaginable pain. The case of Tiffany Hall raises numerous questions about her motivations, behavior, and the role mental health may have played in her actions. Speculation about Tiffany's mindset has been a central theme in attempts to understand what led her to commit such heinous acts against her friend Jamla Tunstall and her children. While her history of mental illness, including diagnoses of psychotic disorder, schizophrenia, mood disorders, and more, was presented during her legal proceedings, it remains unclear how much these factors influenced her crimes. Some argue that her actions were the result of deeply rooted psychological struggles and untreated trauma, while others see her as calculating and devoid of empathy, using her friendship with Jamla to carry out premeditated violence. The nature of Tiffany's acts, ranging from the calculated murder of a pregnant friend to the drowning of innocent children, forces society to grapple with the limits of human cruelty and the potential for betrayal in even the closest of relationships. Her decision to stage a stillbirth and mislead others with a fabricated story adds another layer of darkness and calculation to her crimes, sparking heated debates on the balance between punishment and rehabilitation in such cases. The public reaction to Tiffany's sentencing has been mixed but often unified in one sentiment: outrage and disbelief. Many question whether life in prison without the possibility of parole is enough for someone who committed such brutal and calculated murders. Others have argued that even the harshest legal consequences cannot undo the suffering caused or bring true justice to Jamla and her children. The question, is life in prison enough for what she did, lingers, reflecting a broader debate about justice, punishment, and society's response to extreme acts of violence. For some, her confinement offers a sense of safety and closure, while for others, it remains a painful reminder of lives lost too soon with no true resolution. The tragic case of Tiffany Hall and Jamla Tunstall underscores the profound complexity of human behavior and relationships. What began as a deep friendship rooted in mutual support and shared struggles ultimately devolved into a shocking betrayal in a series of horrifying acts. The case raises difficult questions about the capacity for violence within seemingly ordinary people, the impact of mental health struggles, and the thin line between trust and danger. As we reflect on this heartbreaking story, we are reminded of the darkness that can sometimes hide within the most unexpected places. To those who have followed this deep dive into the case, we invite you to engage with us further. Share your thoughts and reflections on what drives such unthinkable acts and what lessons we might learn from these tragic events. If you find this content meaningful and wish to explore more true crime stories and deep dives, please consider liking this video, leaving a comment with your thoughts, and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories to light and creates a space for thoughtful discussion around difficult and important topics. Thank you for joining. They say a child cannot choose their father, but a mother definitely can. In this case, that choice made all the difference. This is not merely a story about one family. It is a tragedy that echoes through society. At the center of this dark tale is Jesse McFadden, a convicted rapist who became a stepfather and ultimately led his family down a path of unimaginable horror. This tragedy raises painful and haunting questions. How did someone like McFadden gain the trust of those around him? Why did no one see the danger until it was too late? This is not just about loss. It is a grim reminder that life-altering decisions, especially regarding who we welcome into our lives, can carry consequences far beyond what anyone could imagine. This is the journey into a chilling and heart-wrenching case, one that will forever etch itself into the minds of all who hear it. About a year ago, a tragic story began unfolding in Henrietta, Oklahoma, centered around Holly Guess, a dedicated 35-year-old mother raising three teenagers. Holly had two daughters, 13-year-old Tiffany Guess and 17-year-old Riley Allen, and a son, 15-year-old Michael Mayo. Though the children had different biological fathers, they all shared a special bond with Tiffany's father, Joe, whom they affectionately called Dad. Joe was more than just a figure in their lives. He was their rock, providing stability and unwavering support. Holly and Joe had been married for 13 years before eventually divorcing. Despite their separation, Joe's love and commitment to the children never faded. He cared for them as if they were his own, and even considered formally adopting Michael and Riley. However, their lives changed dramatically on May 26, 2022, when Holly remarried. She entered into a new marriage with Jesse McFadden, a union that would eventually lead their family down a dark and tragic path. Jesse McFadden's life was marked by a series of criminal behaviors that escalated in severity over time. Initially involved in theft, McFadden faced legal trouble for stealing a significant sum of money from a family member, an act that resulted in a felony conviction. His criminal history, however, took a much darker turn when he was charged and later convicted for a serious and violent assault involving a young woman. This crime led to a 20-year prison sentence. While incarcerated, McFadden's conduct raised significant red flags. He was repeatedly found in possession of contraband cell phones, which he used to engage in inappropriate and exploitative communications. This included contact with individuals outside of the prison system, some of whom were minors, raising serious concerns about his behavior even while under strict supervision. Despite these troubling incidents, McFadden managed to present a facade of compliance and productivity during his incarceration. His prison record showed positive evaluations for work performance and educational achievements, which contributed to his eligibility for early release. The decision to grant him early freedom, despite his repeated violations and evident predatory tendencies, prompted questions about oversight within the system. The risks he posed were evident, yet his release proceeded, leaving a lingering sense of unease and doubt about the safeguards intended to protect the public from such individuals. In 2021, Holly Guess married Jesse McFadden, a decision that would later prove to have devastating consequences for her family. At the time of their marriage, it remains unclear whether Holly was fully aware of McFadden's criminal past. What is evident, however, is that their relationship exhibited signs of manipulation. Jesse was reportedly able to exert a strong influence over Holly, potentially downplaying or concealing his criminal history to maintain control over the narrative of their relationship. This lack of full transparency created an environment where Holly may not have recognized or fully comprehended the potential danger he posed. Adding to this complexity, Holly's mother, Jeanette Mayo, took steps to warn her daughter about McFadden. Having uncovered troubling details about his background, Jeanette tried to alert Holly to the potential risks associated with her new husband. Despite these efforts, the warnings were either dismissed or not fully heeded. Whether this was due to trust, manipulation, or a lack of tangible evidence is unclear, but the consequences were severe. The relationship, built on what appears to have been a foundation of manipulation, secrecy, and incomplete truths, eventually led to a series of events that would shatter the lives of those around them. McFadden's ability to integrate himself into Holly's family, despite his history and restrictions, points to a pattern of control and deception. The lack of awareness or understanding on the part of those closest to him allowed his past actions to remain hidden, creating a dangerous situation for everyone involved. As details of their relationship emerged, it became clear that McFadden's influence over Holly and the lack of transparency regarding his past were critical factors that contributed to the unfolding tragedy. In April 23, Jesse McFadden organized what was presented as a weekend gathering at his home, extending an invitation to Ivy Webster, Brittany Brewer, and other friends of his stepdaughter, Tiffany Guess. The gathering was meant to be a time for socializing, bonding, and fun, creating an atmosphere of normalcy and familiarity. The teenagers, eager to enjoy the weekend with their friends, accepted the invitation, expecting a casual and enjoyable stay. This was not unusual for the group, who often participated in social activities and outings together. The weekend began seemingly innocently. McFadden took the girls on outings, including shopping trips and visits to a family entertainment center, presenting himself as a supportive figure who was creating a positive experience for the teenagers. He stayed in regular contact with Ivy Webster's mother, Ashley Webster, using Snapchat to send updates and photos that showed the group engaging in normal activities. To all appearances, there was nothing to suggest that anything was amiss. However, as time passed, the situation took a troubling turn. Communication with the children became impossible, and as concern grew among their families, they realized that something was wrong. McFadden's absence at a scheduled court appearance compounded the worry, raising serious questions about his intentions and actions. Attempts to reach the children were met with silence, sparking a desperate search and heightening fears for their safety. The search led law enforcement to McFadden's property, where they were met with a devastating scene. 7 bodies were found, including those of the missing children. Evidence indicated that each of the victims had been fatally shot, a tragic and violent end that left investigators and the community grappling with the magnitude of the loss. In some cases, additional signs of harm were found, underscoring the severity and brutality of what had occurred. The bodies were located in 2 different areas on the property, a detail that suggested possible attempts to conceal or stage the aftermath of these acts. This effort to obscure the full extent of what had transpired only deepened the horror and complexity of the crime. The discovery of the victims shattered any remaining illusions about McFadden's intentions and revealed a chilling reality that would leave lasting scars on the community and all those affected. The weekend that began with promises of connection and joy ended in a tragedy of unimaginable scope, exposing the true and horrific depths of McFadden's actions. Upon entering Jesse McFadden's property, investigators were met with a scene that revealed a deeply disturbing level of planning and premeditation. Among the evidence recovered were restraints, chains, and a range of other items designed to assert control over the victims. These items suggested that McFadden had gone to great lengths to ensure he could exert physical dominance, making escape or resistance difficult. Their presence was not incidental, but rather pointed to a calculated and deliberate effort to control and confine those in his proximity. In addition to these items, there were other pieces of disturbing paraphernalia found throughout the home. The presence of such materials indicated a sinister environment and highlighted the extent to which McFadden sought to manipulate and dominate his victims. This evidence painted a picture of a man who meticulously planned his actions, leaving little to chance and demonstrating a chilling degree of control and intent. The condition of the house itself further underscored the premeditated nature of McFadden's acts. It was clear that this was not a spur-of-the-moment outburst, but rather the culmination of a long-standing pattern of manipulation and violence. The arrangements found within the property showed a high degree of planning, making the tragedy even more horrifying. Compounding the tragedy were significant lapses in law enforcement protocols and oversight. Despite McFadden's known criminal history and ongoing legal troubles, There were critical gaps in monitoring and supervising his activities. This lack of effective oversight allowed him to continue his behavior unchecked and contributed to the escalation that led to the tragic events. One particularly egregious failure was the decision to grant family members access to the crime scene before it had been fully secured and processed. This procedural lapse not only risked contaminating crucial evidence, but also inflicted additional trauma on grieving family members who were confronted with the shocking reality of what had occurred. Allowing access to the crime scene prematurely reflected a breakdown in protocol that raised serious questions about the effectiveness of law enforcement's handling of the case and their ability to ensure the integrity of the investigation. The combination of inadequate monitoring and procedural oversights highlighted systemic weaknesses that may have enabled McFadden to evade scrutiny for far too long. These failures became a focal point for community outrage and a call for accountability and reform to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The revelations from the crime scene served as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, effective oversight, and adherence to protocols in protecting the public and ensuring justice is served. In the days leading up to the tragic events, Jesse McFadden sent a series of messages to Caitlin, the young woman at the center of his pending legal case. These messages painted a picture of a man spiraling into desperation, gripped by fear of the consequences he faced in the upcoming trial. The messages revealed McFadden's mounting anxiety and fear of exposure, as the trial threatened to bring his past predatory behavior into public view and potentially lead to further incarceration. His words expressed a mix of resentment, self-pity, and deflection, as he tried to shift blame onto Caitlin for his deteriorating circumstances. McFadden's communications suggested that he viewed the trial as an existential threat to his carefully constructed life. He blamed Caitlin for his legal troubles, portraying himself as a victim and refusing to accept responsibility for his actions. His messages conveyed his desperation to avoid accountability, indicating that he would go to extreme lengths to prevent his life from unraveling. This fear of exposure and the potential loss of control over his narrative became a driving force behind his increasingly erratic and dangerous behavior. McFadden's need for control extended beyond his fear of legal consequences. Throughout his life, he exhibited a pattern of manipulation, using psychological tactics to dominate those closest to him. His relationship with Holly and her children was marked by his efforts to create a facade of stability and trust while concealing his darker tendencies. He exerted influence over Holly, isolating her from outside perspectives and creating an environment where he could maintain control. The messages McFadden sent to Caitlin reflected his attempts to control the narrative surrounding his actions. He sought to paint himself as a misunderstood victim, blaming others for his circumstances and refusing to accept the consequences of his behavior. This need for control was a consistent theme in his interactions, revealing a man driven by a desire to maintain power and avoid accountability at any cost. The intended trial against Jesse McFadden for inappropriate contact with Caitlin was rendered moot due to his death. Scheduled to be a pivotal moment in which McFadden would have been held accountable for his past actions, the trial never occurred. His death, along with the tragic events surrounding it, brought a sudden and devastating end to any legal proceedings. This absence of judicial resolution leaves the families of the victims, as well as the public, without a sense of formal accountability for his crimes. The inability to see McFadden face justice in court underscores the profound loss and leaves lingering questions about how and why such a tragedy was allowed to happen. The fallout from McFadden's actions has had a lasting impact on survivors and exposed serious flaws within the systems meant to protect vulnerable individuals from harm. Testimonies from past victims, such as Crystal Smith, have shed light on how the system failed to address and manage McFadden's behavior over the years. Crystal's story, recounting her own experiences of abuse at McFadden's hands, highlights how past warnings and red flags were either inadequately addressed or overlooked entirely. These failures allowed him to maintain a veneer of normalcy, enabling him to continue his harmful behavior under the guise of a reformed individual. The case has brought renewed scrutiny to legal oversights and gaps in monitoring and enforcing conditions for individuals with a history of predatory behavior. McFadden's ability to create a facade of stability and evade deeper scrutiny demonstrates the need for more robust measures to track, supervise, and intervene when warning signs emerge. The systemic issues at play, including inconsistent enforcement of restrictions and inadequate communication between agencies, underscore the urgency for reform. The aftermath of the tragedy has left families in the community in a state of profound grief and disbelief. For the parents of Ivy Webster and Brittany Brewer, the loss of their daughters is an unimaginable blow that has shaken their lives to the core. They continue to grapple with the shock and pain of losing their children in such a senseless and violent manner. The memories of Ivy and Brittany, vibrant and full of promise, are now a source of deep sorrow and a reminder of the fragility of life. Their families have been forced to navigate the overwhelming grief while also seeking answers and accountability for the systemic failures that allowed Jesse McFadden to continue his harmful behavior. Jeanette Mayo, the mother of Holly Guess, has spoken publicly about her daughter's relationship with McFadden and the manipulation that defined it. Jeanette reflects on the ways McFadden isolated and controlled Holly, creating a facade that concealed his true nature. For Jeanette, the tragedy has been compounded by the painful realization that her daughter and grandchildren were drawn into McFadden's web of control. Her reflections on Holly's experience underscore the devastating impact of manipulation and abuse, and her words serve as both a tribute to her loved ones and a call for greater awareness and vigilance. For Caitlin and other individuals who had suffered at the hands of McFadden, the tragedy has reopened old wounds and deepened the sense of trauma. The knowledge that McFadden's actions might have been prevented through more effective oversight and intervention has added to their pain and frustration. Caitlin, in particular, has been forced to confront not only her own past trauma, but also the realization that the system's failures allowed McFadden to continue causing harm. The emotional toll of this realization is immense, as survivors are left to grapple with a mix of grief, anger, and a sense of powerlessness. Past victims, including those who had interactions with McFadden during his time in prison, have come forward to share their stories and raise awareness about systemic shortcomings. Their voices highlight the need for comprehensive reform and greater accountability within the legal and correctional systems. The impact of the tragedy extends far beyond the immediate victims, touching the lives of all those who were affected by McFadden's actions. The journey to recovery is a long and difficult one, marked by the need for healing, justice, and systemic change to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. In the face of such profound loss, the resilience and determination of survivors, families, and community members stand as a testament to the human capacity to seek light and hope in the darkest of times. Their efforts to honor the memory of their loved ones and push for meaningful change reflect a commitment to ensuring that the lessons of this tragedy are not forgotten and that no other families have to endure such devastating pain. The tragedy involving Jesse McFadden has ignited widespread public outrage, with significant scrutiny placed on the failures within the justice and correctional systems. Many are calling for a thorough examination of early release policies and the inadequate monitoring of high-risk offenders, questioning how someone with McFadden's criminal history was able to continue unchecked. The impact of McFadden's actions extends deeply into affected families and the community, leaving lasting social and psychological scars. Grieving families are forced to confront not only their loss, but also the realization that systemic failures may have contributed to their tragedy. This has prompted calls for increased oversight, stronger protective measures, and heightened accountability for institutions responsible for public safety. Closing reflection. The tragedy surrounding Jesse McFadden serves as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary interactions. It emphasizes the importance of vigilance, critical awareness, and caution when dealing with new people or unexpected situations. Learning from this devastating event is essential to ensuring that such harm is recognized and prevented in the future. By staying informed and alert, individuals can better protect themselves and their communities from potential risks. If you found this story thought-provoking and want to stay informed about more true crime cases, be sure to subscribe to our channel. By joining our community, you'll be among the first to hear in-depth explorations of compelling cases, learn about systemic issues, and engage with others committed to seeking justice and awareness. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thank you for your support and stay vigilant. Police officers approached the Stockdale residence in Beach City, Ohio, with an uneasy sense of urgency. The front door was ajar, a stark invitation to a scene of unimaginable violence within. Moments later, the chilling crack of a gunshot pierced the air. What lay beyond was a tragedy that shattered the image of a deeply religious, tightly controlled family. A family whose strict rules and isolationist beliefs may have sown the seeds of their own destruction. The Stockdale family massacre remains cloaked in mystery, its motive unknown, leaving behind a trail of questions about how darkness can hide behind even the most outwardly wholesome facades. This is the story of faith, repression, and a devastating spiral into violence. The Stockdale family comprised parents Tim and Kathy and their 4 sons, Calvin, Charles, Jacob, and James. Deeply committed to their Christian faith, Tim and Kathy chose to raise their children away from the perceived negative influences of modern society. This decision led them to move to a secluded farm in Beach City, Ohio, with the purpose of immersing their sons in a controlled environment that reinforced strict religious and moral values. Kathy Stockdale was known for maintaining an extremely regimented household, establishing a set of strict rules that governed every aspect of her sons' lives. From the moment they woke up, their schedules were carefully structured, with little room for deviation. They were homeschooled, performed numerous chores around the farm and house, and had to follow precise routines. Kathy's system of control was enforced through a strict system of rewards and punishments. For example, small privileges, such as listening to an approved radio show, had to be earned through obedience and hard work, while failure to comply with her rules often led to penalties. The boys were largely isolated from the outside world, forbidden from watching television, playing video games, or making friends outside of the family. Even dating was prohibited, as Kathy feared it could lead to unwanted physical relationships or emotional entanglements. The goal of such restrictions was to shield the children from what their parents believed were harmful influences and to ensure their moral upbringing. However, this highly controlled environment left little room for personal freedom or external experiences, creating a situation that some described as suffocating and imprisoning for the Stockdale sons. Daily life on the Stockdale farm was rigidly structured, with every hour of the boys' day planned out to reinforce a disciplined lifestyle. Each morning, the boys awoke to a precise schedule, which included assigned chores around the farm and homeschooling sessions with their mother, Kathy. Their education was deeply rooted in religious teachings, with limited focus on secular topics or mainstream education. Isolated from the typical experiences of children their age, they rarely interacted with anyone outside the family, as friendships and exposure to popular culture were strongly discouraged. Music became one of the few creative outlets available to the Stockdale children, providing both a shared family activity and a break from their otherwise monotonous routines. Tim and Kathy, both avid fans of bluegrass, instilled a love for the genre in their sons from an early age. This shared passion led to the formation of the Stockdale Family Band, where each family member played a distinct role in performances across the state. Jacob, who displayed exceptional skill with the fiddle, quickly gained recognition and became an integral part of the group. Jacob's talent went beyond family performances, as he achieved acclaim for his fiddle-playing abilities throughout Ohio. Starting at just 7 years old, he quickly progressed, eventually earning the title of Ohio State Grand Fiddle Champion in 2012. His musical success brought a sense of accomplishment to the family, though it remained firmly rooted within the confines of the Stockdale household and the band's carefully managed image. For the Stockdale boys, bluegrass music was not just a hobby, but an important family duty, and one of the few expressions of joy permitted in their sheltered lives. In 2008, the Stockdale family stepped into the national spotlight when they participated in the reality television show Wife Swap. The premise of the show involves swapping the mother or wife from 2 vastly different households for a set period, with the goal of contrasting lifestyles, values, and family dynamics for dramatic effect. The Stockdales, known for their deeply conservative and religious lifestyle, were matched with the Tonkovich family from Illinois, a household that represented the polar opposite of the Stockdales' strict and regimented existence. The Tonkovich family, led by Lori Tonkovich, embraced a relaxed and permissive approach to parenting. In contrast to the Stockdale children's rigid structure, the Tonkovich children were allowed to make their own decisions, wake up when they wanted, eat fast food, and enjoy unrestricted freedom in their daily activities. This stark contrast was central to the show's premise, highlighting how two families with such vastly different values would adapt to their temporary new environment. Upon arriving at the Stockdale home, Lori Tonkovich was immediately struck by the harshness of the family's rules and the isolation imposed on the boys, Calvin, Charles, Jacob, and James. She quickly realized that the Stockdale boys had virtually no exposure to modern entertainment or social experiences. Television, video games, and socializing with peers outside the family were strictly forbidden. The boys followed a stringent schedule, performing household chores and adhering to their mother Kathy's rules, which were reinforced by a reward and punishment system that tightly controlled their behavior. During her time with the family, Lori attempted to introduce the boys to a more typical teenage experience by loosening some of their restrictions. She set up cable television, brought a video game console into the home, and encouraged the boys to engage with the new forms of entertainment. The boys' reactions varied. While some were curious, their responses were tinged with hesitation and guilt. Jacob, in particular, reacted strongly to the changes. When encouraged to watch television, he became overwhelmed with fear, broke down in tears, and fled outside, fearing eternal damnation for engaging in what he had been taught was sinful behavior. This moment revealed the depth of the boys' conditioning and their internalized belief that deviation from strict rules would lead to severe moral consequences. Lori's interactions with the Stockdale boys highlighted both the oppressive nature of their upbringing and the stark contrast between the families. She grew emotional upon witnessing their restricted lives and expressed a desire to show them alternative ways of living. Her efforts, however, faced resistance from Kathy and Tim Stockdale, who were unwavering in their beliefs and quickly reverted to their established routines upon the show's conclusion. While Wife Swap was intended to entertain and provoke thought about differing lifestyles, its impact on the Stockdale family revealed deeper tensions in the restrictive environment in which the boys were raised. The experience ultimately served as a precursor to the tragic events that would unfold years later, leaving viewers and those who knew the family to question how much this brief exposure to a different life affected Jacob and his siblings. After their appearance on Wife Swap, the Stockdale family's daily life appeared to return to its original structure, with no substantial changes to their strict and controlled routine. Despite exposure to a vastly different lifestyle during the show, Tim and Kathy Stockdale doubled down on their values and rules, seemingly unaffected by the brief period of change. The experience highlighted the rigidity of the Stockdale's beliefs, and any temporary relaxation of their rules quickly vanished once the cameras were gone and normalcy returned. Over time, the older Stockdale sons began to leave the family home in pursuit of their own lives. Calvin, the eldest, moved away to attend Hillsdale College in Michigan, eventually becoming a teacher. Charles followed suit, choosing to attend medical school in Philadelphia. Their decisions to leave the family farm and settle far from home suggested a strong desire to distance themselves from the restrictive environment they had grown up in. While Calvin and Charles sought independence and freedom, Jacob and James remained at home with their parents. Jacob, in particular, continued his involvement with the Stockdale family band, which had become a key aspect of the family's public life and one of the few creative outlets permitted. As a talented fiddle player, Jacob had gained recognition for his musical abilities, and his continued participation in the band demonstrated his commitment to the family's shared passion. However, his decision to remain at home, even into his mid-20s, raised questions. Unlike his older brothers, who sought independence, Jacob stayed in the familiar environment that, while oppressive, may have represented stability or a sense of duty. Speculation abounds as to why Jacob did not leave the family home. Some believe he felt a deep sense of loyalty to his parents and their values, while others suggest that he struggled with adapting to life outside of the structured, insulated world he had always known. The possibility that Jacob was grappling with mental health issues further complicates this narrative. Whatever the reasons, his continued presence within the Stockdale household set the stage for the tragic events that would later unfold. As years of isolation, strict control, and unrelenting expectations may have played a significant role in the tensions that ultimately erupted. On June 15, 2017, a horrific tragedy unfolded at the Stockdale family home in Beach City, Ohio. The events leading up to that day remained shrouded in mystery, but the outcome was both shocking and deeply tragic. It was a seemingly ordinary afternoon when, at approximately 4:36 p.m., Stark County Police received a 911 call originating from the Stockdale residence. The call ended abruptly, raising immediate concerns and prompting an emergency response. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the front door slightly ajar, with an eerie silence emanating from within. Moments after they approached, they heard a gunshot, heightening their sense of urgency. Inside the home, the police discovered Jacob Stockdale with a self-inflicted shotgun wound to his head. Though critically injured, he was still alive, and the firearm was found nearby. The scene became even more distressing as officers conducted a further search and discovered the bodies of Kathy Stockdale and her youngest son, James, who had both been fatally shot with the same weapon. The brutal nature of the crime stunned the responding officers in the surrounding community. Jacob was rushed to a local hospital in critical condition. He survived his injuries but suffered severe consequences, including blindness in one eye and significant brain damage. During his recovery, law enforcement and the community were left grappling with questions about his motives and mental state. Why would a young man described as quiet and musically gifted commit such a horrific act? The lack of immediate answers only deepened the tragedy's impact. The reactions from surviving family members reflected the profound grief and complexity of the situation. Calvin Stockdale, Jacob's eldest brother, issued a public statement mourning the loss of his mother and younger brother. He described James as a lively, fun-loving individual with a passion for music and a bright future ahead of him. Tim Stockdale, Jacob's father, spoke of Kathy's dedication as a mother and her deep commitment to her Christian faith, homeschooling, and organic living. Neither statement directly addressed Jacob's role in the murders, emphasizing instead the qualities of the loved ones they lost. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the Stockdale family chose to focus on their faith and memories of Kathy and James. Their statements, while expressing deep sorrow, also suggested a complex mix of grief, compassion, and silence surrounding Jacob's actions. The community was left to wonder about the pressures, isolation, and possible mental health struggles that may have contributed to this devastating act. The events of that day forever changed the Stockdale family, leaving questions about Jacob's state of mind and the tragic culmination of years of rigid control and isolation. The legal proceedings for Jacob Stockdale began in the aftermath of the tragic events on June 15, 2017. After recovering from his self-inflicted injuries, Jacob faced serious legal consequences for the deaths of his mother, Kathy, and younger brother, James. The initial charges were 2 counts of first-degree murder. However, due to his severe injuries, including blindness in one eye and significant brain damage, authorities delayed bringing formal charges until he was deemed medically stable. During the early stages of legal proceedings, questions about Jacob's mental competency emerged. His defense team filed motions to assess whether he was fit to stand trial, citing concerns about his mental state and cognitive capacity following the incident. Jacob was sent to Heartland Behavioral Health Hospital for extensive evaluation. While there, doctors conducted mock trials and legal assessments to determine his understanding of court processes and his ability to participate in his defense. Over the course of more than a year, Jacob's competency was repeatedly evaluated, with doctors eventually deeming him fit to stand trial. Jacob's time in the mental health facility was not without incident. He made 2 escape attempts. The first in November 2019, when he tried to hide behind a stack of books, and the second a few months later, when he attempted to blend in with a crowd leaving the facility. Both attempts failed, but they raised questions about his mental state and intent. Throughout the court proceedings, Jacob's behavior was scrutinized. At one point, during a video appearance in court in September 2020, he refused to respond to the judge's questions. Some speculated that his behavior stemmed from his lifelong unfamiliarity with technology, while others believed it could have been an intentional tactic to bolster his plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Ultimately, the court found him competent to stand trial based on the evaluations conducted by mental health professionals. In December 2020, a psychologist declared Jacob fit to proceed, paving the way for trial preparations. Legal delays, partly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, further postponed the case. Finally, in April 2021, nearly 4 years after the murders, Jacob Stockdale pleaded guilty to the charges of murder. The court imposed a sentence of 15 years for each count, allowing for the possibility of parole in 2048. This relatively lenient sentence given the severity of the crimes, was likely influenced by the Stockdale family's appeals for leniency, underscoring their complex feelings of grief and forgiveness. Despite the plea and sentencing, the exact motive behind Jacob's actions remains a subject of speculation, with many lingering questions about his mental state and upbringing. The motives behind Jacob Stockdale's tragic actions remain a subject of intense speculation, as neither Jacob nor the surviving family members have provided clear explanations. Several theories have been proposed to understand what may have led him to commit the murders of his mother and younger brother. One key area of focus is the Stockdale family dynamics and the strict, highly regimented upbringing enforced by Kathy and Tim. The Stockdale children were raised in near total isolation from modern influences, with an unwavering set of rules governing every aspect of their lives. Kathy's strict parenting approach allowed for little personal freedom or exploration, leaving the boys with limited autonomy or social interaction. This rigid environment has led some to suggest that Jacob, as one of the remaining sons still living at home in his mid-20s, may have struggled deeply with feelings of repression, frustration, or suffocation. Another potential contributing factor is mental illness. It has been speculated that Jacob may have inherited or developed a mental health disorder that went unrecognized or untreated due to the family's insular lifestyle and focus on strict discipline. The pressure to conform to a rigid standard of behavior without external support or freedom may have exacerbated any underlying mental health issues, potentially leading to a breaking point. Some experts have considered the possibility that Kathy herself may have suffered from obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, reflected in her intense need to control every detail of her children's lives, and Jacob may have inherited or been influenced by these tendencies. The effects of isolation also cannot be overlooked. Being cut off from the broader world and denied many typical aspects of childhood and young adulthood could have taken a significant toll on Jacob's mental and emotional well-being. This isolation might have left him unprepared to navigate adulthood independently, contributing to a deep sense of entrapment and internal conflict. Some speculate that Jacob may have felt a mix of resentment, hopelessness, and confusion, ultimately leading to an explosive reaction. There are two primary theories regarding Jacob's motives on the day of the murders. The first is that he may have snapped under the weight of years of repression and strict control, leading him to take violent revenge on those he perceived as the source of his suffering. The second theory suggests that Jacob's actions may have been driven by a desire to escape and protect his brother James from enduring a similar fate, with tragic consequences. While the true motives may never be fully known, Jacob Stockdale's story highlights the complex interplay of family dynamics, mental health, isolation, and restrictive upbringing that can contribute to unimaginable acts of violence. This tragic case remains a haunting reminder of the potential dangers lurking beneath the surface of seemingly well-intentioned but oppressive environments. Jacob Stockdale was sentenced to 15 years for each of the 2 counts of first-degree murder following his guilty plea. This relatively lenient sentence for such severe crimes was influenced, in large part, by the Stockdale family's plea for leniency. The surviving family members, including Tim and Jacob's older brother Calvin, appealed to the court on Jacob's behalf, emphasizing the need for compassion and understanding due to Jacob's troubled mental state. Their request highlighted the complexities of grief and love within a family shattered by tragedy. The family's reaction to Jacob's actions was marked by a mix of grief, shock, and a deep commitment to forgiveness, consistent with their strong Christian beliefs. Tim and Calvin's statements publicly mourned the loss of Kathy and James while choosing not to condemn Jacob outright. Instead, they focused on the positive qualities of the deceased and avoided extensively addressing Jacob's role, reflecting the difficulty of reconciling their pain with their values of compassion and mercy. This willingness to forgive Jacob, despite his crimes, underscores the family's dedication to their faith, but it also raises questions about the nature of forgiveness in the face of such immense loss. The Stockdale case also prompts broader discussions about justice, forgiveness, and the impact of upbringing on behavior. Was Jacob's sentence sufficient for the gravity of his actions, given his family's advocacy for leniency and the consideration of potential mental illness? The answer to this question depends largely on one's views about accountability, the influence of upbringing and isolation, and the extent to which individuals should be held responsible for actions stemming from long-term psychological and environmental pressures. The family's call for mercy highlights the tension between the desire for justice and the commitment to forgiveness, leaving observers to ponder, how much can an oppressive upbringing, mental health struggles, and a life of isolation mitigate the responsibility for heinous actions? In seeking a path forward, the Stockdale family's response serves as a poignant reminder of both the complexity of human behavior and the power of compassion amid unimaginable pain. The tragic story of the Stockdale family raises difficult and lingering questions. Was Jacob's punishment appropriate given the circumstances surrounding the murders, or should his mental state and upbringing have warranted a different approach? Did the oppressive environment, isolation, and strict control imposed by his parents ultimately play a decisive role in driving Jacob to commit such a heinous act? These questions are complex and challenge us to consider the intersections of accountability, compassion, mental health, and family dynamics. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this deeply unsettling case. Do you believe Jacob's upbringing pushed him to a breaking point? Or was this an unforeseeable act of violence? Was justice served, or should the courts have taken a different approach? Please share your insights, opinions, and reflections in the comments below. If you found this exploration of the Stockdale family case thought-provoking and want to dive deeper into more true crime stories, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for daily updates and detailed case breakdowns. Thank you for watching. Welcome back to the channel. Today we explore a heartbreaking case that turns a family reunion into a scene of tragedy and shock. What should have been a joyous gathering ended in one of the most devastating mass murders Canada has ever witnessed. The impact of this massacre has left a lasting scar, not just on the family involved, but on the entire community, resonating deeply across the nation. In 2011, Danushka Wickramasinghe left Sri Lanka, driven by a singular purpose: to carve out a promising future for his family in Canada. The decision was not an easy one, but he was determined to create a better life filled with new opportunities. Arriving alone, Danushka faced years of loneliness and hard work as he laid the foundation for what he hoped would be a brighter future. He secured employment and worked tirelessly to establish a small cleaning business. His sacrifices paid off when, in the summer of 2023, his family was finally able to join him in Ottawa. Danushka's wife, Darshani Dilanthika Ekanayake, was a former teacher with a strong passion for education. Together they had 3 children: Inuka, a bright and energetic 7-year-old, Ashini, their spirited 4-year-old daughter, and little Renaya, who was just 2 years old. The family's joy multiplied with the arrival of their youngest daughter, Kelly, born in Canada mere months after their reunion. For Danushka and Darshani, every moment spent with their children was a cherished milestone, a testament to the hardships they endured and the resilience they cultivated. The family quickly settled into their new life in a quiet Ottawa suburb. Their days were filled with the innocent laughter of children, family meals, and dreams for the future. Inuka and Ashini attended a nearby school, eagerly making new friends and learning about the world around them. Renaya's playful antics brought lighthearted moments, while baby Kelly's arrival completed the picture of a loving family beginning anew. But behind the facade of joy and optimism, there were challenges. Adjusting to a new country, navigating cultural changes, and building stability took time and perseverance. Through it all, Danushka and Darshani held on to each other, determined to make their new life work. What no one could predict, however, was how abruptly and violently their story would take a tragic turn, forever altering the lives of those they touched. On the night of March 6, 2024, a devastating massacre unfolded in the Barhaven neighborhood of Ottawa, Canada, forever altering the lives of the Wickramasinghe family. What should have been a place of safety and warmth became the setting for unimaginable violence. Upon returning home around 10:30 p.m., Danushka Wickramasinghe was met with a horrifying scene that would shatter his world. Inside the home, 19-year-old Fabio Dua, who had been staying there with Danushka's hospitality, turned on his host, unleashing a brutal attack with a sharp-edged weapon. The attack claimed the lives of Danushka's wife, 35-year-old Darshani Banbaranayake Gamawalwe, Darshani Dilanthika Ekanayake, and their 4 children: Inuka, aged 7, Ashwini, aged 4, Renaya, aged 3, and their youngest Kelly, a mere 2.5 months old. A family friend, 40-year-old Amarakun Mubiayansela Gegamini Amarakun, who was living with the family, also fell victim to the violence. The home, once filled with laughter and hope, was transformed into a nightmarish scene of loss. Fabio de-zoysa, a 19-year-old at the heart of the devastating massacre, shared a complex relationship with the Wickramasinghe family. He was a former student at Algonquin College in Ottawa, where he first crossed paths with Danushka Wickramasinghe. Recognizing de-zoysa's need for stability after being asked to leave his boarding accommodations, Danushka extended an act of generosity by inviting him to live in the basement of his family home. What appeared to be a benevolent act of kindness would tragically have devastating consequences for the family. De-zoysa's background was marked by increasing signs of isolation and detachment. Upon his initial arrival in Canada, he resided with relatives but soon began cutting off ties, blocking phone numbers and severing social media connections. This gradual withdrawal pointed to deeper psychological struggles and a tendency to isolate himself from those who cared about him. Though those who knew him described him as quiet and reserved, de-zoysa's behavior reportedly grew more concerning in the months leading up to the horrific incident. While there was no documented criminal record in his past, reports of de-zoysa's struggles with mental health, including potential thoughts of self-harm and social withdrawal, became evident during the investigation. This raised serious questions about his mental state and what might have driven him to commit such a shocking act of violence. His descent into isolation was underscored by his withdrawal from relatives in the community, as he seemed to distance himself further from those around him. The tragedy was made all the more harrowing, given that de-zoysa had been treated as a member of the family. Accounts revealed that the Wickramasinghe family, including Danushka, had celebrated milestones with him, such as marking his birthday with care and inclusion. This depth of betrayal left the community reeling, grappling with the incomprehensible violence unleashed by someone who had been embraced and welcomed into the family. The actions of Fabio de-zoysa shocked not only those who knew him, but also the broader public, sparking difficult questions about mental health, isolation, and the unpredictable darkness that can emerge within seemingly familiar faces. As investigators and community members search for answers, the tragic loss serves as a sobering reminder of the complex interplay between mental well-being, human relationships, and the potential for devastation. On the evening of March 6, 2024, the Wickramasinghe family home in Barrhaven, Ottawa, became the scene of a devastating and incomprehensible tragedy. Danushka Wickramasinghe, the father and sole survivor of the massacre, returned home around 10:30 p.m., expecting an ordinary evening, only to be thrust into a nightmare of violence. Inside his house, he encountered Fabio de-zoysa, a 19-year-old whom the family had taken in and offered accommodation. De-zoysa, for reasons that remain unclear, had armed himself with a sharp-edged weapon, later described as a knife or knife-like object. As Danushka entered, he was suddenly confronted by de-zoysa in what would become a life-and-death struggle. The assailant launched a brutal assault, inflicting multiple grievous injuries. Danushka suffered deep stab wounds to his face, chest, and back. The ferocity of the attack was evident in the severity of his wounds, with one of his fingers partially severed as he tried desperately to shield himself. Despite the overwhelming pain and the brutal onslaught, Danushka managed to escape momentarily. He retreated to a room within the house, locking himself inside to prevent further attacks. Overcome with terror, shock, and the dawning realization of what might have happened to his loved ones, he remained trapped in a state of profound fear and anguish. Eventually, mustering all his remaining strength, Danushka emerged from his temporary refuge. Bloodied and desperate, he stumbled outside, screaming for help. His cries shattered the stillness of the night and caught the attention of neighbors, who immediately called emergency services. Responding police units arrived swiftly at the scene, finding Danushka critically injured but conscious. He was rushed to a nearby hospital where his condition was stabilized. His physical wounds, however, would pale in comparison to the emotional devastation that would follow. Inside the home, the true horror of the night unfolded. The lifeless bodies of Danushka's family lay throughout the residence. His wife, Darshani Banbaranayake Gamawalwe, Darshani Dilanthika Ekanayake, just 35 years old, was among the victims. Their 4 children, Inuka, age 7, Ashwini, age 4, Ranaya, age 3, and their youngest, Kelly, a mere 2.5 months old, were all brutally slain. Each life had been cut short in an act of unimaginable violence. Also among the deceased was 40-year-old Amarakun Mubiayansela Ge Gamini Amarakun, a family friend who had recently been staying with the Wickramasinghe family. The site inside the home was one of chaos and bloodshed, described as a scene that would haunt even seasoned investigators. Fabio de-zoysa, the young man responsible for this massacre, was subdued by police at the scene. He was arrested without further incident, though the motive for his rampage remained shrouded in mystery. Authorities charged de-zoysa with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder for his attack on Danushka. In the aftermath of the massacre, the community and nation grappled with shock and grief. The senseless and extreme violence perpetrated within what was once a loving family home left many searching for answers and a way to comprehend the unfathomable. The story of the Wickramasinghe family, torn apart in an instant, serves as a chilling reminder of the potential darkness lurking behind familiar faces and the fragility of life itself. Darshani was a dedicated mother and a woman of admirable strength and compassion. At 35 years old, she had built a meaningful life centered around her family and cultural roots. Darshani held a degree from Colombo University in Sri Lanka, where she had been a standout student. Prior to moving to Canada, she worked at St. Benedict Model School, where she was remembered as a devoted educator who cared deeply about her students' well-being and academic growth. Her transition to life in Canada was fueled by the dream of providing better opportunities for her children, and she embraced her new life with determination and optimism. Darshani was known not only for her dedication to her family, but also for her generous spirit and warm personality. She was deeply committed to her Buddhist faith and carried a sense of peace and humility in her daily interactions. She often volunteered within her local community, offering support and guidance to fellow immigrants navigating the complexities of resettling in a new country. Darshani was described by friends and family as loving, nurturing, and selfless, a beacon of strength for her family and a valued member of her community. The Wickramasinghe family's move from Sri Lanka to Canada was not just about seeking a brighter future, but also about maintaining their cultural ties and sense of belonging within the diaspora community. The family was well known within Ottawa's Sri Lankan community, actively participating in gatherings and cultural events that allowed them to stay connected to their roots. They were respected and cherished for their kindness, hospitality, and dedication to preserving their heritage while adapting to life in a new country. Through their community involvement, the Wickramasinghe family touched the lives of many, offering support to others who face similar challenges of starting anew in a foreign land. Darshani, in particular, was a guiding presence, offering advice, friendship, and encouragement to those who knew her. Her passing, along with the tragic loss of her children, left a profound void within the Sri Lankan and broader Ottawa communities, who mourned not just the loss of lives, but the silencing of a warm, hopeful family spirit. The aftermath of the massacre of the Wickramasinghe family sent shockwaves through Ottawa and reverberated far beyond, reaching both the Sri Lankan community in Canada and grieving loved ones back in Sri Lanka. The tragedy claimed the lives of Darshani Dilanthika Ekanayake, her 4 children, and a family acquaintance, leaving Danushka Wickramasinghe as the sole surviving family member. The loss of life was unfathomable, and the weight of the grief was evident as communities mourned together. Darshani's mother, Gantha Ekanayake, recalled her final conversation with her daughter on the night of March 6, 2024. As they spoke, she sensed something was troubling Darshani, but their conversation ended quickly without delving into details. The next day, Gantha's worst fears were realized when news broke of the massacre. Her grief, compounded by the memory of that last call, became a painful reminder of what could never be undone. The tragedy sparked a wave of sorrow and disbelief in the Ottawa community and among the broader Sri Lankan diaspora. Neighbors who had grown to know and care for the family spoke of the warmth and kindness of Darshani and Danushka. Vigils were held, with hundreds gathering to pay their respects and share in the collective grief. The handmade cards from children at the school attended by Anuka and Ashini were laid at the scene, expressing love, memories, and the irreplaceable loss of their classmates. Candles, flowers, and heartfelt messages served as silent witnesses to the community's pain. The funeral ceremonies for the Wickramasinghe family were deeply emotional and steeped in tradition. 5 coffins, 3 small white ones for the children and 2 larger ones for Darshani and the family friend, were brought together in a somber ceremony. Buddhist rituals were performed alongside prayers and reflections from other religious leaders, emphasizing the need for unity, strength, and compassion in the face of such incomprehensible loss. Danushka, still recovering from his injuries, stood alongside family members and community leaders, his face etched with grief and disbelief. He expressed his deep gratitude for the support he received, but was clearly overcome with the weight of his loss. In an outpouring of support, members of the Sri Lankan community and other residents of Ottawa mobilized to help. A fundraiser was launched with the aim of easing Danushka's financial burden and helping him rebuild his life. Contributions poured in rapidly, reflecting the immense compassion and solidarity of the community. The GoFundMe campaign raised hundreds of thousands of dollars within days, demonstrating not only the desire to provide material support, but also the overwhelming empathy of strangers, friends, and neighbors alike. Amid the grief, there were calls for reflection and heightened awareness about the challenges and risks faced by new immigrants and international students. The tragedy served as a stark reminder of how fragile and unpredictable life can be and inspired efforts to foster greater support networks for those starting new lives abroad. It also brought to light the importance of vigilance and community care to prevent similar tragedies from occurring. As the Wickramasinghe family's story unfolded, it became a symbol of both profound loss and extraordinary resilience. The community's response showed that even in the face of darkness, compassion and solidarity can bring hope and healing to those left behind. The legal proceedings surrounding Fabio de-zoysa, the 19-year-old suspect in the massacre of the Wickramasinghe family, have been closely monitored by both the legal community and the public due to their complexity and gravity. De-zoysa was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder for the attack on Danushka Wickramasinghe. The charges reflect the premeditated and heinous nature of the crimes, and de-zoysa has been kept in protective custody since his arrest. The court hearings for de-zoysa have involved a range of legal considerations, including determining his mental competency to stand trial. His legal counsel has been engaged in discussions with the Crown Attorney's Office to ensure full disclosure of the evidence, which includes witness statements, forensic findings, and other relevant documentation. Legal experts have speculated that the trial could extend for several years due to its complexity, the need for thorough psychiatric evaluations, and the volume of evidence to be examined. The possibility of de-zoysa raising a defense of not being criminally responsible due to a mental disorder remains a point of consideration, adding another layer of intricacy to the case. The investigation into the massacre has been described as both complex and emotionally challenging. Law enforcement and forensic teams have pieced together evidence from the crime scene, sought to understand de-zoysa's background, and explored his interactions with the Wickramasinghe family. The precise motive behind the brutal attack remains unclear, fueling public curiosity and speculation. Theories range from psychological instability and social isolation to potential underlying grievances, though no definitive motive has been presented by authorities. Societal discussions about the case have touched on broader issues, such as the challenges faced by new immigrants, the responsibilities of host families, and the potential pressures experienced by young international students in unfamiliar environments. Media coverage and online discussions have highlighted concerns about mental health support, community integration, and the importance of monitoring at-risk individuals. Speculation has also emerged regarding the influence of isolation, cultural displacement, and other social stressors that may have played a role in de-zoysa's actions. While many questions remain unanswered, the legal proceedings and investigations are ongoing, aiming to uncover the truth behind this tragedy and bring justice to the victims and their surviving loved one. The psychological and social context surrounding the massacre of the Wickramasinghe family has prompted significant speculation regarding the mental health and emotional state of the suspect, Fabio de-zoysa. Family members and acquaintances described him as a quiet, reserved young man, but there were emerging indications of his struggle with depression and detachment from those around him. De-zoysa's background, including his departure from school and limited connections with his community, points to possible social and emotional challenges. It is unclear whether these challenges were adequately recognized or addressed. His drastic actions have led to public discussions about the critical need for mental health support for vulnerable individuals, especially those navigating significant transitions in new environments. Observers have questioned whether stronger intervention or support systems could have prevented the tragic outcome, underscoring the need for more comprehensive mental health care, especially for immigrants and international students. The community has been profoundly impacted by the tragedy. Residents of Ottawa, particularly those within the Sri Lankan community, have expressed grief, disbelief, and a heightened sense of vulnerability. The massacre has underscored the challenges faced by new immigrants trying to build their lives in a foreign land, highlighting the tensions and complexities that can arise even within seemingly supportive situations. The family's kindness towards de-zoysa, taking him into their home, celebrating his milestones, and attempting to create a sense of belonging for him, stands in stark contrast to the violence that ultimately unfolded. This juxtaposition has led many to reflect on the fragility of human connections and the potential for deep-seated issues to remain hidden behind seemingly ordinary interactions. The broader societal concerns stemming from this tragedy include discussions on community integration, the importance of building support networks, and the role of early intervention for individuals exhibiting signs of mental or social distress. As the community mourns the loss of the Wickramasinghe family, there is a collective call for increased awareness and resources to address the complex intersections of mental health, social isolation, and immigrant experiences, aiming to prevent such devastating acts in the future. The tragedy serves as both a stark reminder of human compassion and a sobering reflection on the need for vigilance and empathy within our communities. In conclusion, the tragic massacre of the Wickramasinghe family has left a deep and lasting impact, not only on the Ottawa community, but on all who have learned about this horrific event. The loss of Darshani Dilanthika Ikanayake, her children, and their family friend underscores the fragility of life and the unexpected depths of human violence. The senseless nature of their deaths is a stark reminder of how acts of kindness can sometimes lead to unimaginable outcomes, highlighting the complexities of trust in human relationships. The ongoing legal proceedings involving Fabio de-zoysa offer no easy answers, only raising more questions about his motives, mental health, and what might have been done to prevent this tragedy. As investigators continue their work, the community remains vigilant, hoping that justice will bring some measure of closure to those who are grieving. To all those hearing this story, we invite you to reflect on the layers of this tragedy, on the importance of community support, mental health awareness, and vigilance in helping those who may be struggling silently. Share your thoughts, stories, or reflections. This is a conversation that matters for healing, for prevention, and for honoring the memory of those lost. In a span of just 24 harrowing hours, two young women, Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabales Arzola, were discovered unconscious outside separate hospitals in Los Angeles. Both were found in critical condition and, tragically, neither would survive. Their lifeless bodies were delivered by two masked men who sped away before offering any information, leaving behind a chilling mystery and a community gripped with shock and questions. The grim circumstances surrounding their deaths immediately captured public attention, setting off a race against time for law enforcement to uncover the truth. This case would soon unravel layers far deeper and darker than anyone could have anticipated. As investigators zeroed in on key suspects, they found themselves drawn into a murky world, a web of deceit and excess nestled within the glamour of Hollywood's elite circles. Beneath the sparkling facade of Los Angeles lay a sinister reality where power, privilege, and corruption intertwined. This document seeks to shine a light on this shadowed world, exposing the figures who use their influence for exploitation and seeking justice for Christy and Marcella. Christy Giles was a 24-year-old model brimming with energy, passion, and an undeniable zest for life. Born and raised in Alabama, Christy's striking looks and ambitious spirit propelled her from a small southern town, onto international runways and into the glamorous world of fashion. Her career took her across the globe, but it was Los Angeles where she chose to plant her roots, building a life with her husband, Jan. Together, they represented a couple full of creativity, love, and ambition, a partnership forged through artistic collaborations and a shared sense of adventure. Hilda Marcela Cabales Arzola, 26, was a brilliant architect from Mexico, determined to make her mark in a competitive industry. She relocated to Los Angeles to chase new opportunities and expand her professional horizons. Marcela was known not only for her keen design talent and meticulous attention to detail, but also for her warmth and charm, which endeared her to colleagues and friends alike. Her move to LA symbolized a leap of faith in pursuit of a brighter future, filled with ambition and possibility. The paths of Christy and Marcela crossed in Los Angeles, and a deep friendship quickly blossomed between them. More than just friends, they became confidants, sharing both triumphs and challenges in their demanding careers. Together, they embraced LA's vibrant cultural scene, attending art shows, engaging in creative pursuits, and exploring the city's social life. Their connection was built on mutual support, laughter, and a shared passion for life's possibilities, creating a bond that would be remembered long after their tragic fate. This is the story of two women who sought to live fully in a city of dreams, only to be caught in a nightmare that exposed the darkest depths of a glamorous but perilous world. On the evening of November 12, 2021, Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabales Arzola set out for what they believed would be a night filled with excitement, creativity, and connection. The two friends had plans to attend an art party, a gathering that epitomized their love for culture and the vibrant energy of Los Angeles's creative scene. Immersed in conversation, surrounded by art and music, the night promised to be a memorable escape from the demands of their professional lives. As the evening transitioned, Christy and Marcela chose to continue their adventure, heading to a warehouse party in East LA, a spot known for its lively atmosphere and eclectic mix of people. Within the thrumming pulse of the music and lights, they danced and celebrated, savoring the moment. For a time, it was nothing but laughter, joy, and the freedom to be young in a city that offered endless possibilities. But as the hours slipped past, an invitation changed everything. David Pierce, a self-proclaimed Hollywood producer, approached them alongside his associates, Michael Ansbach and Brant Osborne. He extended an offer to join an exclusive after-party at his apartment in the Hollywood Hills. Intrigued and feeling adventurous, Christy and Marcela accepted, unaware that this decision would lead them into the depths of danger. Los Angeles, the city of angels, is renowned for its glamour and allure, an ever-shifting tapestry of stars, culture, and dreams. But beneath its polished facade lies a darker reality. The city's nightlife, with its elite parties and hidden excesses, has long harbored secrets that few dare to confront. It is a place where the boundaries between privilege and peril blur, and those who enter its shadows may never return unchanged. For Christy and Marcela, what began as an innocent night out became a descent into that dark, hidden world, a place where danger lurked behind masks of power and influence. As the night wore on, Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabales Arzola found themselves at the apartment of David Pierce, expecting a lively after-party as promised. But once they arrived, a chilling realization set in. There was no party. Instead, it was just the two of them, alone with Pierce and his associates Michael Ansbach and Brant Osborne. What began as a night of revelry now carried an unsettling sense of isolation and growing unease. The energy shifted from excitement to dread as the women quickly recognized the precariousness of their situation. Hours passed. At 5:30 a.m. on November 13th, Christy, sensing the need to leave, sent Marcela a message that spoke volumes, "Let's go," accompanied by a wide-eyed emoji. Marcela replied, agreeing to leave and stating she would call an Uber, which was set to arrive shortly. The text exchange revealed their urgency and growing discomfort. Yet, despite their best efforts, Christy and Marcela never made it to the safety of that car. When their Uber driver arrived, there was no response. After waiting for several minutes, the driver eventually left, unaware of the fate that had befallen the two women. By morning, the nightmare took a harrowing turn. Christy was found unconscious and abandoned outside a hospital in Los Angeles, brought there by two masked men who left as swiftly as they arrived. Medical staff rushed to save her, but it was too late. She was pronounced dead soon after. Marcela, meanwhile, was left in critical condition at another hospital hours later. Despite all efforts to stabilize her, she succumbed to her injuries a few days later, her life slipping away just before her 27th birthday. The events of that night marked the beginning of a tragic unraveling, or beyond knowing. A grim reminder of the darkness that can hide beneath the surface of LA's allure, where innocence and ambition met a fate no one could have foreseen. The tragic deaths of Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabales Arzola prompted an intensive investigation that began with a frantic search for answers. Christy's husband, Yan, was among the first to recognize that something was terribly amiss. After receiving no response to messages and calls, he used the phone location sharing feature the couple frequently utilized for safety. What he found was deeply troubling. Christie's last known location was a nondescript apartment in West Los Angeles, one she had never mentioned visiting. This discovery set off alarm bells and became a crucial lead for investigators. Acting on Yan's information, law enforcement quickly identified the apartment's resident, David Pierce, a self-proclaimed Hollywood producer. As detectives delved into Pierce's background, suspicions mounted. Their focus sharpened when they obtained surveillance footage that captured the shocking aftermath of the night in question. The footage revealed Pierce, along with his associates Michael Ansbach and Brant Osborne, moving Christy and Marcella's limp bodies from the apartment to a vehicle. Masked and seemingly calculating, the three men drove the women to separate hospitals and left them on the sidewalk before speeding away without providing any information or seeking proper medical assistance. Investigators meticulously pieced together the timeline of events. It became evident that Christy and Marcella had been drugged while at Pierce's apartment. The toxicology reports confirmed their worst fears. Both women had been administered a lethal mix of substances. Christy's autopsy revealed traces of fentanyl, cocaine, ketamine, and GHB, a potent combination known for its incapacitating effects. Marcella's toxicology results were similarly disturbing, showing a mix of cocaine, MDMA, and other unidentified substances. The toxicologist's conclusion was unequivocal. The drugs were administered in doses far exceeding any recreational use, indicating that neither woman had willingly consumed them. The presence of such substances suggested deliberate intent to render Christy and Marcella unconscious. The drugs found in their systems, especially GHB, commonly known as a date rape drug, painted a grim picture of predatory behavior. Investigators surmised that Pierce and his associates had used these substances to incapacitate the women, leaving them vulnerable and unable to resist whatever plans the men had in mind. Further evidence gathered from Pierce's apartment pointed to an attempt to conceal the truth. Forensic teams uncovered signs of a hasty cleanup. Traces of drugs and other forensic evidence had been wiped or tampered with, suggesting a calculated effort to erase any link between the men and their crimes. The surveillance footage from the apartment's vicinity, combined with digital records, placed Pierce, Ansbach, and Osborne at the center of this dark web. Public outrage grew as the details of the case emerged. The calculated dumping of Christy and Marcella's bodies at separate hospitals revealed a complete disregard for their lives. Instead of seeking genuine medical help, the men attempted to evade responsibility, callously leaving the women to their fate. For investigators, it was a race against time to ensure that justice would be served for Christy and Marcella. Their deaths exposed a deeper, more insidious darkness lurking within Los Angeles' social elite, sparking demands for accountability and a reckoning with those who exploit power and influence to prey on the vulnerable. The fight for justice became deeply personal for the families and friends of Christy and Marcella. For them, this was not just an investigation. It was a battle to ensure that those responsible for this heinous act would be brought to justice and that their loved ones' lives and memories would not be forgotten. As the investigation into the deaths of Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabales Arzola unfolded, the evidence against David Pierce and his associates, Michael Ansbach and Brant Osborne, painted a chilling picture of predatory behavior and calculated deception. The trial, which garnered national attention, laid bare the details of their actions and the events leading to the deaths of the two young women. The courtroom was filled with tense silence as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict for David Pierce, Michael Ansbach, and Brant Osborne. Throughout the harrowing trial, evidence revealed a devastating narrative of betrayal, predation, and complete disregard for human life. Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabales Arzola became symbols of the dark underbelly lurking beneath Los Angeles' glamorous facade, and this moment marked a long-awaited step toward justice. David Pierce, the man at the center of it all, was charged not only with the deaths of Christy and Marcella, but also with additional charges of predatory behavior spanning several years. Convictions for manslaughter, intentional drugging, and multiple counts of sexual assault placed him at the focus of the harshest sentence handed down by the court. In a stern and unwavering address, the judge emphasized the gravity of Pierce's actions. "You exploited the vulnerable, hiding behind a facade of success and influence," the judge stated. "Your callous disregard for human life and predatory, manipulative behavior cannot go unpunished." Pierce was sentenced to 60 years in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The sentence not only reflected the crimes against Christy and Marcella, but also recognized the broader pattern of harm Pierce had inflicted upon others over the years. The judge's words echoed throughout the courtroom as a stark reminder of accountability for those who use power to cause harm. Michael Ansbach and Brant Osborne, charged as accomplices to manslaughter, were next to face sentencing. Their roles in aiding Pierce in attempting to cover up the crimes did not go unnoticed. The judge spoke gravely of their complicity. "While you may not have shared the same intent, your actions enabled a predator and denied the help these two women so desperately needed," the judge declared. Ansbach was sentenced to 12 years in prison, while Osborne received a 10-year sentence. Both sentences reflected their roles in the cover-up, their failure to seek help for Christy and Marcella, and their attempts to evade justice. The aftermath of the tragic deaths of Christy Giles and Hilda Marcella Cabales Arzola left a deep and unrelenting mark on those who loved them. For Christy's husband, Jan, life was forever shattered in the blink of an eye. He had built a life full of love, passion, and shared dreams with Christy, and in an instant, those dreams were stripped away. Jan faced the crushing reality of his loss while shouldering the immense burden of seeking justice for his wife. His grief was compounded by the need to stay strong, to advocate and speak out against those who had taken Christy from him. Every step in the legal battle felt like another wound. Every court date, every piece of evidence, and every painful reminder of what had been lost. For Marcella's family, the pain of losing a beloved daughter, sister, and friend was equally devastating. They had encouraged Marcella to pursue her dreams, to seek out a better life and build a bright future in Los Angeles. That future, full of promise and hope, was cruelly extinguished. Her parents, siblings, and close friends carried the heavy weight of grief while grappling with the harsh reality that justice for Marcella was a long, arduous path. The psychological toll was immense. Sleepless nights, constant memories of their loss, and the never-ending ache of a future without her. The emotional impact rippled outward, touching everyone who had known Christy and Marcella. Friends, colleagues, and loved ones struggled to come to terms with the senselessness of the tragedy. Anxiety, fear, and a sense of helplessness became part of their daily lives as they tried to navigate a world that no longer felt safe or just. Counseling and support groups became a refuge for many, offering a place to share their pain and begin the long road to healing. The psychological trauma extended beyond immediate family and friends. The case exposed the dark realities lurking within the city's nightlife, leaving an entire community grappling with questions about safety, trust, and exploitation. The knowledge that those with influence and power could exploit and harm others so deeply unsettled many, fueling a call for accountability and change. In their quest for justice, Christy's husband and Marcella's family transformed their grief into determination. They became advocates not only for their loved ones, but for all victims of exploitation and abuse. Through public statements, campaigns for awareness, and a relentless pursuit of legal action, they vowed to ensure that Christy and Marcella's lives would not be forgotten, that their stories would spark change, and that the pain and loss they endured would not be in vain. The tragic deaths of Christy Giles and Hilda Marcella Cabales Arzola cast a harsh light on the dark underbelly of Los Angeles's elite social circles and the abuse of power that often lurks beneath its glamorous facade. What appeared on the surface to be a shocking crime involving two young women tragically became a broader symbol of systemic issues within the entertainment industry and the power structures that shield predators from accountability. The case ignited outrage and a demand for change, not just for justice for Christy and Marcella, but for countless others whose stories remain untold. As details of the case unfolded, community and advocacy groups mobilized, determined to channel their grief and anger into meaningful action. Organizations dedicated to combating sexual violence, exploitation, and abuse within high-profile industries lent their support, rallying around Christy and Marcella's loved ones. They called for stronger protections, better handling of cases involving powerful individuals, and accountability at all levels. Awareness campaigns sprang up, urging both survivors and allies to speak out and demand systemic reform to prevent such tragedies in the future. The public response was powerful. Vigils and marches were held to honor the memory of Christy and Marcella, turning grief into solidarity and resolve. Social media became a platform for raising awareness about the case, amplifying the voices of survivors and demanding that those who exploit power face real consequences. For many, the case represented a turning point, a catalyst for examining and addressing the ways in which privilege and influence can be wielded as tools of harm. This widespread response also prompted calls for reform within the entertainment industry and beyond. Many began questioning how someone like David Pierce, with a history of predatory behavior, could continue to move freely within Hollywood circles. The case underscored the need for greater scrutiny, transparency, and accountability in the way such matters are handled. In addition to the push for justice, the community response focused on supporting survivors of violence and exploitation. Counseling and support groups expanded their reach, providing safe spaces for survivors to share their experiences and seek healing. Advocacy groups collaborated with legal experts to push for legislative changes aimed at protecting victims and ensuring more stringent consequences for those who abuse their power. The legacy of Christy and Marcella became a rallying cry, a call to shine light on the shadows, hold the powerful accountable, and ensure that no more lives are senselessly lost to exploitation and violence. Their story, while heartbreaking, serves as a reminder of the strength that emerges when communities stand together to demand justice, compassion, and meaningful change. The heartbreaking story of Christy Giles and Hilda Marcella Cabales Arzola serves as a poignant reminder of the need to protect society's most vulnerable and hold those who abuse their power accountable. Their tragic deaths are emblematic of a system where power, influence, and privilege can be wielded as weapons, often at the expense of those who dare to dream, seek connection, or simply live freely. And as a community, we must refuse to turn away from these injustices. Instead, we must face them head-on, advocating for a world where such abuses of power are not allowed to fester unchecked. The social and entertainment circles of cities like Los Angeles, while glittering and alluring, are often fraught with hidden dangers. It is critical to raise awareness about these risks and educate ourselves and those we care about on how to navigate them safely. We must empower people, especially those entering environments rife with potential exploitation, to recognize signs of danger, seek help without fear, and speak out against wrongdoing. This vigilance and shared commitment are necessary to ensure that no one else becomes a victim. If you found this story important, compelling, or eye-opening, please consider subscribing to our channel for more in-depth true crime stories and investigative content. By subscribing, you join us in shining a light on hidden truths, fighting for justice, and amplifying the voices of those who can no longer speak for themselves. Thank you for being here with us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest stories. Stay informed, stay safe, and together let's continue the pursuit of justice.